Hello, welcome. You are either watching this live or this is a recording, and I wanted to say welcome to the kickoff call or the kickoff video for the team challenge around becoming more plant-based. This is being hosted and run on Uloo, so I'll share a little bit about Uloo and the challenge and all the fun things that are in store. With me in the challenge is Laura from the Uloo team, and she will be supporting with the activities or if there's any questions, but more of that to come. So I'm going to be sharing and off sharing and playing some videos as well today. So just bear with me. I titled it 5 Days to Becoming More Plant-Based, and I'll talk and I'll define what that means to be plant-based. And yeah, I think we can just get started. So there's going to be a story that I'm going to tell, some background into what it means to be plant-based, what it is, why, and the journey. And if there's some questions, we can discuss that here, or feel free to reach out to me or to Laura during the challenge itself. So I want to start with this story, and if you've taken a challenge with me before, you've already probably heard the two tigers tale, but I have a different spin on it today. I think the last time I mentioned it was in the gratitude challenge. So just quickly, the story goes as follows. I'll stop sharing so you can see me bigger. There was a person making their way through the jungle. A tiger jumps out, starts chasing, trying to eat this person. The person runs away. They see a cliff. They slide off the cliff, and they're hanging from a vine. And there's this tiger trying to eat them from above. The vine is thorny and spiky, so it pierces their hand. It's kind of an uncomfortable situation. And they're about to let go and jump off a little ledge to safety. And as soon as they try to do that, a second tiger comes from the bottom. And there's a tiger from the top, there's a tiger from the bottom trying to eat this person. In the midst of all this, two rats find themselves on the vine and they start chewing away at the vine. The person kind of looks around, understands the situation they're in, and they see this berry bush growing from the side of the cliff. So they reach out and they pick one of the berries, they look at the berry, and they smell it, put it in their mouth, they eat it, they say, that's delicious. So that's the story. Not maybe the most happiest of stories, because that person's in a situation where whatever happens, one of the tigers is going to end up eating this person. And it represents our lives in a large degree, because we can't run away from the past, can't run away from the future. There's a lot going on in this very moment. And often these moments are pretty difficult. But yet, life provides us plenty of gifts, plenty of opportunities to really appreciate what's here. And that berry was that gift. And I'm sure that person and many of us, if we were in that moment, and we'd probably be just all over the place, but if we were to really pause and be like, hey, this is probably the last meal I'm ever going to have, we would definitely eat that a bit differently. We would really soak in and appreciate this food and where it came from. Eating is one of those things that we do very often, a few times per day, probably. But how often do we really pause and think about the food that we're eating? Where does the food come from? How does this food impact my life and the lives of others and the lives and the life of this planet? We are what we eat, they say. So what are we eating? But if I'm to expand further, because this isn't just a challenge about eating, the things in my life, the things I wear, the things I put on my skin, the things I surround myself with, where does that come from? How does that impact me and others and this planet? So that's what we're going to be exploring, is this kind of approach of just being more aware of the plants and how much of what we consume and what we put on us and what we surround ourselves is based on plants or based on other things, and what is the implication of those two. So with that, back to screen sharing. So the background of the plant-based movement, I think there was the first, and we'll see this in a video later, but the first kind of, I think, plant-based recipe was in the 1800s, but the first time this kind of, the term veganism, and what we're doing isn't going to be vegan. This isn't a vegan challenge, so I'll talk about that in a second, but we can say that officially this movement started in 1944. The first time it was coined, it was written to avoid using animal products for ethical reasons. Now this has expanded to all sorts of things today, from diet to lifestyle. And, vegans is kind of that thing to minimize the harm to the environment, to the harm of animals and the harm of the planet. But plant-based is different. Before I play that video, plant-based, or plant-forward as sometimes it's being coined, is to focus on things in your life being primarily from plants. So this not only includes the fruits and the veggies, that we eat, but it's also the clothing that we have, the leather versus the plant-based ones, the cosmetics that we use, etc. So I want to play this video just for a minute to kind of, what's the difference between plant-based and vegan? And this is in particular to diet, but I think it'll give you a nice sense of what the difference is. See why I'm not sharing full screen. Let me just quickly reload this for you all. Okay. So that was a little bit of the difference. And maybe just kind of in my own words to reiterate. You're eating lots of plants. You're surrounding yourself with lots of plants. but you're not restricting yourself to an ultimatum, that no more meat or no more eggs, or I'm not, doing cosmetics or have clothing. So there's a lot more flexibility. As you saw, there's also evidence that suggests a plant-based diet is more healthy than a vegan diet, because there's all sorts of processed food and sweets that one can consume that are vegan, whereas a plant-based diet really emphasizes, the food to be unprocessed, whole-based, ideally even more local, to kind of cut on the cost of transportations. So with that, the why plant-based, and I'll share additional links in the chat later on, or in the Uloo app. But just wanted to highlight some things. That if we were plant-based, we can cut our carbon footprint by 50% and reduce. This is just phenomenal numbers for me. 3,700 gallons per person per day. A calorie of animal protein requires 11 times as much fossil fuels as 1 calorie of plant protein. We can see that a lot more of the millennials are switching to meat alternatives, and are definitely more open to the plant-based. We can see that, a lot of Americans are switching to a plant-based diet. We can also see that a plant-based diet or a plant-based lifestyle does a few things. And I wanted to highlight these 3 key things. Is that it's more beneficial. I mean, really look at the research yourself if you don't believe me, for the planet. Okay, most of the fossil fuels goes to the animal industry, the farming, these mass farms. The vast majority of antibiotics and medicine goes to the animal industry. We know that most of the viruses, like COVID, originate from these animal, the way that we're consuming animals. We know that it takes a lot more energy and resources and water and space to produce a calorie or a pound of animal food versus plant-based food. For your health, we also know the risks involved with eating too many animals. We know that the World Health Organization puts red processed meat on the same as cigarettes. We know that eating too much red meat per week also causes adverse effects. As you saw in the video, eating more plant-based can have, better impact. And if you're thinking more kind of spiritual or energy-wise, where are you getting your meat from if you are eating meat? Because there's a lot different kind of energy if you're doing, buying something local that maybe your family raised the animal, or in your town there's a butcher, or you're getting milk from the local farmer, etc. And kind of the lifestyle of that animal versus this mass industry farming where these animals are drugged and beaten and abused, and the children taken away from the mothers. I mean, that's a pretty shitty environment, if I may, and kind of the energy or the vibe is a lot worse. So we can actually measure the amount of stress in the cells of slaughtered animals versus more, friendly. I don't know if there's a friendly way to slaughter, but we can measure the differences. So there's a lot of implications on the health, your own health. And also, animals, and I know this is an argument that I'm going to try to make here, but we're very we've become less barbaric as humans throughout history. But in the past, we had gladiators and we were slaughtering each other in the streets. We're not really doing that so much now. We've been very sexist, we've been very racist, we've been very this and that throughout history. And as science and as we evolve, we've become more open and more compassionate and more understanding. Now we have this very strange kind of relationship with animals as a human species, because some animals we eat and other animals we don't eat. Some people will eat dogs, others will not eat dogs. Some people will eat pork, others will not eat pork. Some people will eat cows, others, cows are holy. So it's very interesting how different pockets of society have, approached different things. But for reasons that why people don't eat the animals or have the animal products, because there's a lot of this compassion for those animals and how they're treated. I'm not going to kind of bore you with numbers, but it's phenomenal how many animals we kill on a daily basis. So yeah, a little bit of that. And
I have to admit that when it comes to,
I'm going to play one more video as we still have some time before I get into, yeah, I'm just looking at the time. So I'll play this video, then I'll quickly go over the hows, and we'll be right on time to close.
I have to admit that when it comes to food, I'm a total sucker. Whether it's sugar or grease or carbs, pretty much bring it on. And I spend a lot of time in Montana. So for me, that medium rare grass-fed ribeye steak, pretty much as good as it gets. I know, I don't do it often. And when I do, I gotta admit, I feel a little conflicted. And that's for a lot of reasons, including the planet. But how big of a problem is what I eat? I mean, does it really make much of a dent in something as huge as global warming? It turns out what we put on our plates matters a lot.
About 25% of all the global climate change problems we're seeing can be attributed back to the food and the choices that we're actually making about what we eat on a daily basis. This is greater than all the cars on the planet. In fact, it's about twice as much global warming pollution as the cars.
Ben Holton and Maya Almaroz study the connection between climate and diet at the University of California, Davis. They track how the way we produce food creates greenhouse gases that contribute to global warming. With their data, the team has crunched the numbers to figure out how much carbon pollution is produced by different foods and different diets.
A lot of people feel really helpless when it comes to climate change, like they can't make a difference. And what our research is showing is that your personal decisions really can have a big impact.
So take that grass-fed ribeye steak I love. If you really look at everything that went into making a single serving of beef, you end up emitting around 330 grams of carbon. That's like driving a car 3 miles. Now, if I choose to have chicken instead, there's more than a 5-fold drop in emissions. Switch to fish, and you see the number go down even more. Now, look at veggies. If I swapped beef out entirely for lentils, well, I'm down to practically nothing. So why does beef, and lamb too for that matter, pack such a powerful punch to the planet? Livestock accounts for a little over 14% of global greenhouse gas emissions. If that sort of seems low to you, consider it's about equal to transportation. We're talking all the cars, trucks, planes, trains, and ships on the planet combined. This is partly because ruminant animals like cows and sheep, they're just gassy. And the methane they produce is at least 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Plus, it takes a lot of land, fertilizer, and about 1 billion tons of grain to feed all that livestock.
And you could feed 3.5 billion people with that grain. If we were just directly eating these grains ourselves, it would eliminate a lot of the CO2 that's emitted from cattle production.
So it's clear that meat has a pretty big carbon load. But it's also worth remembering that not all livestock is raised equally. In parts of the American West, for instance, ranchers are working to raise livestock in ways that actually help restore the land. And they're experimenting with ways that soil and grasslands can be used to keep carbon pollution out of the air. But even these sustainable ranchers will really tell you we're probably eating too much meat.
I know a lot of people who, if you don't serve them meat for lunch or dinner, they're kind of like, well, when is the meat coming out?
It's to the point now where the US actually has one of the highest meat footprints per capita. So what about not eating meat at all? Vegan is the way to go for the least impact on the planet, but it's not that much different in terms of emissions than, say, a vegetarian diet. And the team found that the environmental impact of the Mediterranean diet is pretty similar to vegan and vegetarian diets. It's a lot less meat heavy than what Americans are used to, so fish and poultry a few times a week, beef maybe once a month, plenty of plant-based foods, and of course, loads of olive oil.
Eliminating like 90% of your meat intake is more important than eliminating all of your meat. We don't all have to be vegan. We don't all even have to be vegetarian. If we can just reduce our meat intake, every little bit helps. And if you can bring it down a lot, you can help the climate a lot.
If we all just switched to a Mediterranean diet, it could actually solve 15% of global warming pollution by 2050.
If everyone were to move toward it, that is equivalent to taking somewhere around 1 billion cars off of the streets in terms of vehicle emissions each year. So that kind of a footprint is big time.
But say you still want more meat than the Mediterranean diet recommends. Just cutting down your portion size to the doctor recommended 4 ounces can reduce your emissions by half. That's huge.
In fact, the doctors are telling us we're eating about twice as much meat as we really need for a healthy diet.
The good news is we are listening to our doctors. In the last decade, there's been a 19% drop in the amount of beef we eat.
All these things that you're already being told are good for you also happen to be good for the planet.
So what we eat really is a big part of the climate puzzle. I mean, we may not all be able to afford an electric car or putting solar panels on our house, but we all have to eat every day. And these choices we make can add up to really big numbers. And since meat has a pretty big carbon load, we need to be thoughtful about how much we eat. As for that ribeye steak that I really love, I am honestly trying to cut back. Maybe just a smaller piece of steak, or simply swapping out a meat dish for a veggie burger. It may seem like a small thing, but it really does add up to big impacts. Hey, so what did you have for dinner last night? Find out how your choices are affecting global warming by taking a quiz at climate.universityofcalifornia.edu, or watch.
Right. So as we come to the end of the time, just a few more things to share about. Like I said, I'll send more these fact sheets and information and links to you all to just have some time to consume that this week. For the journey itself, this is the kickoff call. We will have a little activities today, as well as activities every single day. So just, it'd be kind of more like information activities and just little small changes one can start putting into their lives just to become more plant-based. Again, the point of this is not to make you switch 100% or become vegan or to, get rid of the things that cause you pleasure in life, but just becoming more aware of what it means to be more plant-based. One quick more video about how to join the team challenge, and then.
Want to join a team challenge on Uloo? Here's how. Go to the Challenges tab. Here, you can either click on Join a Challenge for the complete list or scroll through the recommended challenges. Once you've decided on a challenge, you can check out all the details, see if this challenge serves your goal, what you will do in this challenge, and get to know your coach better. Mark the dates of the team challenge and get ready to join. While waiting for the kickoff call where your coach will introduce you to the challenge, feel free to say hi to your teammates on the chat. You'll be able to see all of the activities and track your progress under the Me tab, and view your teammates' progress under the Team tab. If you missed any activities, don't worry. They'll be available under the Me tab for you to catch up. And congrats! By joining a team challenge, you've begun your path to self-growth with Uloo.
I look forward to being on this challenge with you all throughout the week. Lots of fun activities and lots of information. I'm going to be here to answer any questions, so feel free to just post a question or contact me privately. We could always find some time to meet in the virtual space. And Laura is also going to be supporting me in this challenge from the Uloo team. So if there's any questions that you have, as I said, reach out to me. If there's anything burning right now, do let me know. Otherwise, I thank you for the time and I enjoy the rest of your day.